Your conditions can be as complex as you need them to be. You can mix ands and ors as many times as you want in a condition. And this, as you'll see, is an even more evident example that you should use brackets all the time on your conditions. So let's see an example. Purely to practice having many conditions in the same statement. Let's have a number. Not a random number this time, because it will be very hard for a random number to match the conditions that we will now create. So, the number 100. Let's say that first we want to check if that number is even. So, if the number divided with a remainder divided by 2 is equal to 0, it's an even number. Maybe we don't want to be very strict about our number being an even number. So let's say that if the number is not even, we want it at least to be a multiple of 5. So again, we have to check if that number can be divided by 5 with a remainder of 0. So, or, since we want either of these conditions to be true, or rem of number divided by 5 equals to 0. Now, let's fix our brackets really quickly. Here we need another set of brackets for the individual expressions like that. Alright, let's take it a step further. Let's say that along with the remainders, we want it also to be within a specified range. And for this purpose, we need to use the AND operator. From the previous lecture, you know how to create an AND condition to check if the number is within a specified range. So between the number more than or equal to 30 and number less than or equal to 60. Alright, now we need another set of brackets for the whole expression. This is one gigantic expression, and we will see what we can do about that. Now, if the number matches all of our conditions, we want to simply print it. So number and let's first see if the number 100 will match our conditions. It doesn't. Let's see if the number 50 will do it. There we have it. Now, let's take this condition piece by piece and see how it's working and what we can do to simplify it. First, we are checking if the number is even or if it can be divided by a 5 without a remainder. Now, this is one condition made up of two conditions. So we have an OR. Either of these two conditions needs to be true. If one of these two conditions is true, this whole set of brackets will return a true. So the number 50, from here we get a true. Then we have another condition that checks if our number is within a specified range. So if the number is within the specified range, as 50 is, this will also produce a true result. And since we have an AND operator between these two conditions, true and true will also give us a true. So the final result for the number 50 is true. Now, if I change this to the number 49, this condition here is not true. Both of these give a false. So false or false will give us a false. It's within the specified range. So we get a false and true. False and true gives us a false. If we give it the number 20, 20 is divisible both by 2 and by 5 with a remainder, but it's not within our range. 55 will be a true result because it's divisible by 5 with a remainder 0. It's not divisible by 2, but we have the OR condition here and it's also within our range. If we change this to AND, this will no longer work, and now we will be able to use only numbers that are divisible both by 2 and 5 and are within the range, like 40 for example, and 45, no, and 50, and 60, and 30. And actually these will be the only numbers that will satisfy our conditions. 35 no longer satisfies it. Alright, now let's move it back to OR. Now, such an expression looks complicated and it cannot be understood with a glance of an eye. The first thing that you can do is split it into 2 or more rows. So we can move this on the next row. But that is not always making it more readable. Instead of moving it to the next row, you can extract the conditions into variables. So we can create 2 variables here. Now, the first condition is checking whether our number is divisible can be divided by a 2 or a 5 without a remainder. So divisible by 2 or 5 equals 2. And we're going to extract our condition. So we're going to extract it like this. And we're going to do the same thing for our other condition, which checks for the range. So within the 30 to 60 range equals 2, we're going to extract this like that. And here we're left only with our AND operator, and we simply need to give it these two variables. Now, all of that will work in the same exact way, but it's now much more readable. You can read it straight in English. You can say, all right, this condition says if it's divisible by 2 or 5 and within the 30 to 60 range, something will happen. And if you're interested in knowing exactly how these conditions work, you can look at the conditions up here if you want to get into the specifics. But if you don't care about the specifics, and if you give this code to someone else that maybe can't understand these conditions, simply by reading this piece of this line of code here, it's in pure English, he will be able to understand exactly what comparison is going on. Assuming that he knows that this is the AND operator. We can't fix this. So it is very important to note that if you're extracting your conditions into variables, just as we did now, these variables must be immediately before your if statement, and there must be no other code in between here. No other code that can change the output of these conditions. Because if you have these conditions extracted somewhere in the beginning of your code and later your number changes somehow, you already have the results of these conditions saved and they will not be updated. The if statement will be looking at the results that the extracted conditions have. It won't care if later something changed. So we know that the number 35 matches our condition, but we also know that the number 49 doesn't. So if I here change it to 49 and we run the code, the number 49 will also be printed because we executed our conditions, we completed our checks before the number changed. So if you need to do something like this, always have your conditions right before your if, because as you can see, now the 49 doesn't make it through the if condition. Using the same approach, you can make your conditions as complex as you need them to be.